And then you take the train, like in the film, which they physically built. But what absolutely blew my mind.
This is the Theme Park Loopy podcast.
Okay, so I specifically requested to do a piece on Wicked for this episode because it has just exploded everywhere. And contrary to popular belief, it is very, very topical for the theme park community right now. So, quick backstory. If you haven't seen Wicked, whether you've seen the Broadway or the West End production, it's a prequel to the Wizard of Oz story about how the Wicked Witch of the West and Glinda the Good Witch, how they were friends and they met, and they're basically their origin stories, essentially, is the easiest way to think of it. So that's the movie. Now, the Broadway show was fantastic and has been running for something like 20 years almost now. And then obviously the movie just got released very recently at the end of November. Now, the movie was fantastic because they shot it all in the UK and they built these visceral sets, like actual physical worlds. There's Shiz University, where they literally built the entire university world with a lake. They built a lake in the set that boats actually moved across. Then they built Munchkin Land. Then they built the Emerald City. But we're talking huge, enormous sets. Now, this has obviously exploded. I mean, in terms of the global box office, when I last checked, it was at 250 million worldwide, which is unbelievable when you consider the budget of the movie was big enough. But I'm not sure what the global status is of the overall budget right now, but it is just blown up. Why this is so topical right now is because of its popularity and its archaicness within musical theatre, but also as a story as a whole. We've been seeing it more and more in theme parks, universal theme parks around the world. Now, what started as a shop, for example, in Orlando, they had the Wicked Experience, which was a huge shop, which had some of recreations of the sets, recreations of some of the dresses, and then its exclusive merchandise. We also saw them then start to do meet and greets with Alphabet and Glinda, the Good and Bad Witch from the movie, which was really interesting. But what absolutely blew my mind, there were rumors flying around that this could be expanded into a theme park land, right? Now, that's hard to believe when they're just building stores and doing promo for it. But what blew my mind and what made me think this is probably a possibility that we could see in the future was if you look at the Universal Studios Singapore pop-up, okay? Google this right now, YouTube it right now. There's a great video online. This isn't just a simple activation. They turned the entirety of the main street, quote unquote, area of Universal Studios Singapore, the main boulevard, into Oz, right? They had little carts and they had little kind of locals of the Emerald City, citizens of the Emerald City that you could meet and greet. However, they built this enormous meet and greet stage where they had this theatrical entrance and exit for Glinda and Elphaba where you could meet them. And they even had an incredibly detailed Wizard of Oz puppet. Like the Wizard of Oz puppet from the movie physically came out of these enormous doors and was interacting live with guests, like in the big booming voice, like in the Wizard of Oz. But then the puppet was physically being live controlled as well. And when I say huge, this thing is like, I don't even know. It's enormous. It towers above people and is booming. Now, you cannot tell me that this has all just been done for a simple pop-up, for a movie release, you know? There was so much investment into this quote-unquote pop-up. And the rumor is that this could very well be potentially a land at Universal Studios Great Britain when it opens. Now, I know that might seem strange to people, but it makes perfect sense when you think of the archaicness of this being a West End show. It's been in the West End and very popular for 20 years, crossed multi-generations. Now we're having a massively grossing film with another one, with possible future spin-offs coming from this universe. But if you watch the film, you will just see how rich and detailed this universe is. It's kind of like, and this is going to upset people, but it's like a new spin almost on Harry Potter. It's set on this, in this wizarding, witches and wizards world, but it is so rich in detail, and the sets were absolutely phenomenal. Now, the rumor is potentially that we could see it being, you start at Shiz University, and then you take the train, like in the film, which they physically built in a similar fashion to the Express that we have in Orlando, over to the Emerald City, and you exit and you enter the Emerald City, and then maybe there's a dark ride there. In terms of, we can speculate all day about what kind of rides we could see in this world. But the fact is that these sets were rich, they're detailed, they have not been destroyed, as far as I'm aware. They're still out there. And there was another rumor that I saw online, again, complete speculation, but we love it, that Universal was building these sets, not only for the movie, but also testing them to see how they would fit in real worlds. Like they had Universal Destination Parks and Resorts executives on the set, looking at how it would actually work in a real physical form. So if you haven't seen the pop-up at Universal Studios Singapore, please YouTube it, because it is incredible. And I definitely think that, okay, if it doesn't come as a huge world to Universal Great Britain, which I think it would be a shame if it didn't, it will be incorporated in the theme parks in a more permanent basis. Because when you look at the money they spent on that pop-up, that is some serious mechanics and effort they put in there. So I think if you're a Wicked fan, this is a really exciting time to see how Universal are going to utilize this IP, what has already been a gross, huge box office smash hit, and is one of already, if it's now not already the number one, it's within the top 3 highest grossing musical movies of all time. So really one to watch there. And I think personally, I would love to see it in Universal Studios Great Britain, especially when you think of the fact that they mentioned in all of their press releases that Universal Studios Great Britain is going to be fully unique. There is nothing in that park that can be found in the Orlando parks, not internationally, right? So we could still see a Jurassic World adventure from Beijing come over. But in terms of, there's going to be no copycats from the Orlando parks at all, right? Because they capitalize the business.
So that's really interesting, because we talked about it wouldn't make a lot of sense to have a Wizarding World because it's kind of been done now everywhere. We then talked about, could that mean Lord of the Rings? But I'm not sure that Lord of the Rings has kind of got the hype at the moment that maybe they were hoping. And maybe now they've pivoted to Oz and Wicked, and that would be good. I mean, that, like you say, that is, it has the same kind of magic, the same kind of whimsy, same kind of fantasy that Harry Potter does, but also completely different as its own story. So, yeah, I buy into that. I think that'd be amazing.